The mountain shakes, but not from the outside. Deep underground, something is tearing it apart from within. Lights flicker violently across steel corridors. Machines that once hummed in perfect rhythm now scream as systems fail in rapid sequence. Engineers freeze, confused, disoriented, watching control panels collapse into darkness, one by one. No warning sirens, no incoming strike, just destruction already inside. Above ground, guards snap their heads toward the ridge as dust bursts from hidden vents. The earth pulses beneath their boots like something alive. Radios crackle, then go silent. Inside, entire sections lose power. Backup systems fail. Seconds later, doors lock, then unlock, then stop responding entirely. This place was designed to be untouchable, buried under rock, shielded from satellites, protected by layers of defense no one was supposed to break, and yet something is moving through it, fast, precise, unstoppable. Before anyone can understand what is happening, the facility begins to die from the inside. Out, and the question is no longer what is happening, it is who is already inside. The first explosion does not sound like an attack. It is too controlled, too contained. Deep inside the mountain, a reinforced steel door warps inward under sudden pressure, bolts snapping like they were never meant to hold. A dull shockwave rolls through the corridor, kicking up dust that hangs thick in the air under flickering white lights. For a fraction of a second, everything pauses. Then shadows move through the breach fast, silent, precise. Inside a nearby control room, engineers glance up as warning indicators begin to flash across their panels. One system fails. Then another surveillance feeds distort into static before cutting out entirely. What just happened? No one answers, because no one knows. Above ground, guards stiffen as a low vibration travels through the rock beneath their boots. It is subtle but unnatural. Dust pushes out from concealed ventilation shafts, rising into the freezing night air like smoke from something. Buried deep below, they scan the sky. Nothing. No aircraft, no incoming strike, no visible threat, and yet something is unfolding beneath them. Inside, security teams scramble into motion. Radios burst alive with overlapping commands, each one more confused. Then the last, Sector 3, just went dark. Repeat, internal breach confirmed, unidentified movement inside restricted zones. The words collide, incomplete, disconnected, until they form a single realization. This is not a system failure. This is an intrusion. Gunfire erupts somewhere deep in the corridors, sharp suppressed bursts that echo unnaturally through concrete tunnels. Then silence, then more gunfire. Closer. Lights flicker violently before entire sections drop into darkness. Backup generators attempt to engage, but shut down. Seconds later, interrupted mid-cycle like something is cutting them off deliberately. The darkness spreads, and with it, control begins to slip. Engineers abandon their stations. Guards hesitate at intersections, unsure where the threat is coming from or where it will strike next. Because the attackers are not moving randomly. They are moving with intent. They know the layout. They know the systems. They know exactly where to go. Within minutes, the facility begins collapsing into controlled chaos, not from overwhelming force, but from precision. And as the sound of movement echoes closer to the core, one terrifying truth becomes impossible to ignore. The mountain was never breached from the outside. It was already compromised from within. Hours earlier, the mountain stood in complete silence. Cold wind carved across its jagged surface, carrying nothing but emptiness. No sound of engines, no visible structures, no sign that anything of value existed beneath it. From the outside, it was just rock remote. Isolated, forgettable, but that illusion was intentional, because deep beneath that surface, hidden behind layers of reinforced stone, something far more complex was operating, a network of tunnels stretched through the mountain like veins cut with precision, reinforced with steel and sealed behind blast doors, designed to withstand immense force. Every corridor led somewhere important. Every turn was calculated. Inside, the air was tightly controlled, filtered, cooled, stabilized. The environment was not just secure. It was engineered for perfection. Rows of advanced centrifuges filled long underground chambers spinning at extreme speeds, so fast they blurred into motion, becoming almost invisible to the eye. Each machine balanced with microscopic precision together. They formed a system that had taken years to design, years to build, years to protect. This was not just infrastructure, it was a strategic core, above-ground security, reinforced that reality-armed patrols moved in disciplined rotations, never predictable. Never exposed surveillance systems scanned miles of surrounding terrain, tracking even the smallest disturbances. Thermal sensors monitored heat signatures, radar coverage layered the sky above. Nothing approached unnoticed. Nothing entered without clearance. Every layer of defense existed to support one belief. This place could not be reached, and for months that belief held. Operations continued without interruption. Equipment arrived in tightly controlled convoys, moving under darkness and disappearing. Behind reinforced access points, communication remained restricted, fragmented, protected from interception. Inside the facility, confidence grew. Not openly discussed, but quietly understood. They trusted the mountain, trusted the depth, trusted the distance, separating them from any real threat, because from every known angle they were safe. But safety like that depends on one fragile assumption, that no one is paying close enough attention, and far beyond the mountain, someone was not watching constantly, but watching carefully, tracking patterns over time. A movement here, a signal there, something subtle just slightly out of place. At first it meant nothing, but slowly, it began to form a shape, a pattern that did not belong. And once that pattern became visible, the mountain was no longer invisible. The discovery did not arrive as a breakthrough. It emerged as doubt. A single satellite pass captured something unusual, subtle disturbances along a remote mountain ridge. Nothing obvious, nothing definitive, just terrain. That did not look quite natural. It was logged, filed, almost ignored. Weeks later, another pass revealed faint heat signatures too consistent to be environmental, too controlled to be random. Still, there was no confirmation, just a growing sense that something was not right. Then came movement. Convoys began appearing on long-range surveillance, traveling only at night, following the same narrow routes through difficult terrain, heavily guarded, perfectly timed, always disciplined, and always returning empty. That detail stood out because it meant something was being delivered and not coming back. Analysts started connecting fragments. Procurement records showed orders for high-precision components, materials used in complex mechanical systems, not weapons, not vehicles. Something more specialized, communications intercepts, added another layer, short transmissions, technical language, references to calibration cycles, system stability, and operational testing. Still nothing direct, but the pattern was building piece by piece until one final element changed everything. Thermal imaging confirmed sustained activity beneath the surface, not temporary, not experimental, active, continuous. Stable thought was the moment doubt disappeared. This was not a hidden project anymore. It was operational. And that realization shifted everything from observation to urgency. Because once a system like this reaches full function, the opportunity to stop it begins to close. Monitoring turned into pressure turned into decision. And somewhere far from the mountain, a quiet order was given, not to watch anymore, but to act. The room was sealed before the discussion even began. No devices, no records. Only a handful of people, each aware that what they were about to consider should never leave those walls. The intelligence was clear, the window was closing, and the options were limited. Airstrikes were dismissed almost immediately. The facility was buried too deep. Layers of reinforced rock and engineered shielding would absorb most of the impact. Even a successful hit would only delay progress, not stop. Missile strikes carried the same problem, visible, traceable, escalatory. Once launched, there would be no ambiguity about who was responsible. That risk was unacceptable. What remained was something far more dangerous, a solution that did not rely on distance, but on proximity. A covert ground operation, small, precise, untraceable. The objective was simple in words but nearly impossible in execution. Enter hostile territory, undetected reach. The facility, penetrate its defenses, destroy it from within, and disappear before a response could be organized. No second chances, no margin for error. The teams selected were not conventional forces. These were operators trained for environments where failure meant isolation or death. Individuals capable of moving silently through terrain designed to expose them and fighting in spaces where every second mattered. Their roles were defined with precision. One element would lead the internal assault, breach the structure, clear resistance and reach the core systems. Another would operate outside the facility, establishing observation points, tracking movement and intercepting any attempt to reinforce or respond. But the real threat was not just enemy resistance, it was the environment itself, the distance from friendly support, the complexity of the terrain, the narrow timing required for insertion and extraction. Every variable had to align perfectly, because once the mission began, there would be no backup, no reinforcement, no safe exit if something went wrong, only a single path forward, and if that path failed, there would be no one coming to bring them back. Preparation did not begin with movement. It began with reconstruction, far from the mountain inside a secured training compound. Engineers built a full-scale replica of the target using months of collected intelligence. Every corridor was measured, every doorway reinforced to match expected resistance. Even the angles of turns and choke points were replicated with precision. This was not training. This was repetition under pressure. Operators moved through the structure again and again, memorizing every detail until the layout became instinct. Breaching drills were executed in silence. Charges were placed, triggered, and reset within seconds. Every motion was timed, every hesitation removed. Mistakes were not tolerated. If a sequence failed, it was repeated again and again, until failure disappeared completely. Inside the mock corridors, teams practiced clearing tight spaces under simulated darkness. Flashbangs detonated in controlled bursts, disorienting. Targets in confined environments. Suppressed weapons fired in short, precise patterns, never wasted, never rushed. The goal was not speed alone. It was controlled speed. At the same time, reconnaissance units trained separately under entirely different conditions. High-altitude insertion drills pushed them into freezing air, forcing them to deploy at the last possible moment before landing. They practiced navigating steep, unstable terrain with limited visibility, carrying full operational gear. Across long distances, observation posts were rehearsed repeatedly, communication protocols refined until messages could be delivered in seconds with minimal exposure. Every detail mattered. Gear checks became routine but never casual. Weapons were disassembled and reassembled under low-light communication systems, tested under interference demolition equipment, inspected down to the smallest component. Nothing was left to chance, because even the smallest malfunction could compromise everything. As the final phase approached, air crews began their own preparation. Flight paths were mapped, carefully designed to follow terrain contours and avoid detection. Altitude, speed, and timing were adjusted repeatedly until the margins were nearly non-existent. Every element, ground teams, reconnaissance units, aviation was synchronized into a single sequence, a sequence that could not fail. By the time the final order was issued, the mission had been tested so many times that it no longer felt theoretical. It felt executable. But there was one thing no rehearsal could replicate. What would happen once it was real? The launch came without ceremony. Inside a dimly lit hangar, rotors began to turn slow at first, then faster, until the air itself seemed to vibrate. No, Munn spoke. No final words were exchanged. Everything that mattered had already been said in training. Operators moved in silence, faces hidden behind gear. Each step deliberate, then the aircraft lifted and disappeared into the night. They flew low, extremely low, so low that the terrain became their shield valleys, swallowing sound ridgelines, masking movement, dry riverbeds guiding their path through darkness. Radar systems scanned above them, never realizing what was slipping beneath inside the aircraft. Silence held, no unnecessary communication. Only short, controlled updates through secure channels. The steady hum of engines filled the space, broken occasionally by slight adjustments, as pilots followed the terrain with precision. Hours passed like this, unseen, unnoticed, until the first phase began. High above the target area, the reconnaissance team moved to the edge. The door opened, and freezing air rushed inside. One by one, they stepped into darkness, vanishing instantly. No noise, no trace. Parachutes deployed late, guiding them silently toward isolated ridgelines overlooking the facility. Within minutes of landing, they disappeared into the terrain, establishing hidden observation points. Through night optics, the mountain came alive. Guard rotations, patrol, patterns, movement along access points. Everything was confirmed in real time. Hours later, the second wave approached. Heavier aircraft, slow movement, higher risk. They came in from a different angle, using terrain masking to remain hidden until the last possible moment. The landing zone was unforgiving. A narrow ledge carved into the mountain, barely enough space for insertion. One miscalculation would expose everything. The aircraft hovered briefly, then ropes dropped. Operators descended in silence, boots hitting rock with controlled impact before clearing the landing zone instantly. Within seconds, they were gone, absorbed into the darkness. From that moment forward, every step mattered. The descent toward the target was slow, deliberate, and dangerous. Loose rock shifted underfoot, cold air cut through gear. Visibility remained limited, but no one stopped. No one hesitated, because below them, hidden deep inside the mountain, the objective waited, and the point of no return had already been crossed. The breach is not loud, it is precise. A controlled charge detonates against reinforced steel, sending a sharp shockwave through the corridor. The door does not explode outward, it gives way inward, folding under pressure like it was waiting to fail. For half a second, everything is still. Then the teams move. Fast inside, the environment changes instantly. Cold concrete corridors stretch into darkness, tight and echoing. Every sound multiplies footsteps, gear movement, distant metal vibrations. The mountain itself seems to carry every noise deeper into its structure. The assault begins without hesitation. Operators move in synchronized pairs, clearing corners before they are fully visible. Suppressed fire breaks the silence in short, controlled bursts. Each shot is measured. Each movement, deliberate. No wasted motion, no delay. Momentum is survival. Ahead, security forces begin to react, but too slowly. Confusion spreads through their positions. Orders overlap. Communication fails. They were trained for external threats, not an enemy already inside their core. Flashbangs erupt in narrow corridors, swallowing vision and sound. For a brief moment, everything becomes white noise and disorientation. That moment is enough. Teams push forward, room by room, level by level, outside the main structure. The second element is already in motion. On the ridgelines above, surveillance teams track movement from incoming response units. Coordinates are passed in short bursts. Interception points are adjusted in real time. No reinforcements are allowed to reach the mountain. Inside, resistance begins to stiffen around key junctions. Guards take defensive positions, trying to slow the advance long enough for coordination to form. But the pace of the assault makes that impossible. Every cleared corridor removes another layer of control. Every second brings the teams closer to the center. Then, the structure opens. The narrow corridors expand into vast underground halls. And there, deep within the mountain, the objective is finally visible. Rows of machines spinning alive. The core of the facility. Still operating, completely exposed, and now within reach. The moment they enter the core hall, everything changes. The environment opens into a massive underground chamber carved deep into solid rock. Long rows of centrifuges stretch into the darkness, machines designed with extreme precision, spinning so fast they blur into a continuous metallic hum. This is not a battlefield anymore. This is the target, and it is still alive. For a brief second, even the operators, slow not out of hesitation, but recognition. What stands in front of them is the result of years of engineering, secrecy, and protected development. A system built in silence, hidden under layers of defense and deception. But that moment passes quickly, because the mission does not allow reflection, only execution. The command is given in short, controlled signals. No voices raised. No unnecessary movement. Demolition teams spread through the chamber with precise coordination. Each operator moves to assigned points. Critical junctions, structural supports, power distribution lines, centrifuge clusters. Charges are placed carefully, not randomly. Every placement has purpose. Too little damage, and the system could recover. Too much force, and the structure risks collapsing. Prematurely trapping the teams inside, time is already running. The silence inside the chamber becomes heavier as final charges are armed. Small blinking indicators confirm activation. One by one, systems are locked in. Then the countdown begins. Inside, the mountain tension shifts again. The first reaction is subtle, a faint vibration through the floor. Then heat. Then a low, growing sound deep within the structure. Thermite ignites, white-hot energy spreads across metal surfaces burning through centrifuge. Frames with extreme intensity, machines that once operated with microscopic precision begin to melt into distorted fragments. Control systems fail instantly. Alarms trigger, but no one is there to respond anymore. Seconds later, secondary charges detonate. The effect is immediate. Structural supports, fracture power lines rupture. Entire sections of the underground chamber buckle under internal pressure. The explosion is not a single moment, it is a sequence. A chain reaction moving through the mountain like a pulse. From above ground, the ridge shifts slightly as shock waves travel upward. Dust bursts from ventilation shafts. The mountain exhales violently, as if something inside it has finally broken free. Deep. Below, the facility collapses inward. Not just damaged, not just disrupted, erased. And as the final detonations fade into echoing silence, the only thing left inside the core chamber is burning metal, falling debris, and the absence of what once existed there. The withdrawal begins before the last echo of the explosion fully fades. Inside the burning corridors, the teams move with the same discipline they used to enter. No panic, no chaos, only controlled motion through collapsing geometry. The structure is unstable now. Walls that once held perfect symmetry are fractured. Dust hangs in the air thick and heavy, reducing visibility to narrow tunnels of light. Every step forward is also a step through uncertainty, but the path is still intact, for now. Operators retrace their route through the damaged facility, clearing intersections again as they move. Not because they expect resistance, but because habit has become survival. Every angle is checked, every corner confirmed. Outside, the mountain remains quiet, but not stable. Deep internal failures continue to spread. Small collapses ripple through unseen sections of the facility, causing vibrations that travel up through the rock like distant thunder above ground. Extraction signals activate. Helicopters are already inbound. No delays. No deviation. Time windows are narrow, and every second matters. At the landing zones, the air is still cold and empty. Then the first rotor noise appears, faint at first, then growing stronger until it fills the valley. One by one, aircraft arrive, fast, low, precise. The teams reach extraction points in sequence. Movement is efficient, almost mechanical now. There is no urgency in their behavior, only execution of a plan already completed in their minds. They board quickly. No hesitation. No. Looking back inside the aircraft, silence returns. Only the sound of rotors and distant rumbling from the collapsing mountain remains. As the helicopters lift, the view changes. Below them, smoke rises through fractured rock. Hidden ventilation shafts release bursts of dust and heat. The mountain looks wounded internally, hollowed, destabilized from within. And then it begins to fade behind them. Within minutes, the formation disappears into darkness, leaving the mountain behind as a shadowed outline. In the distance, the entire operation, from insertion to destruction to extraction, lasted less than an hour. No celebration follows, no announcement, only silence. Because in operations like this, success is not marked by noise, it is marked by disappearance. In the days that follow, the world does not hear a victory announcement. There is no confirmation, no official statement, no visible claim of responsibility, only silence. But silence in modern conflict is never empty, it carries weight. And this silence is heavy high above the mountain. Satellites return to the same coordinates that once held a hidden underground complex. What they see is no longer structure. It is damage, a scarred mountainside, collapsed entry points, burned-out ventilation shafts still, releasing faint traces of heat. The facility is gone in the way that matters most, not just physically destroyed, but functionally erased. Inside intelligence rooms far from the battlefield, analysts review the aftermath frame by frame. What once appeared as an impenetrable site is now an exposed ruin buried under its own collapse. Years of development disrupted in a single night, not through prolonged warfare, not through open battle, but through a short, precise window of execution. And that realization spreads quietly through every level of strategic command because it confirms something uncomfortable. Even the most protected sites are not untouchable. Even the deepest facilities can be reached. Even the most advanced systems can fail from within. But beyond the technical assessment, there is something harder to quantify. The psychological impact. Inside the region, trust begins to fracture. Security doctrines are reassessed. Defensive assumptions are questioned. If this site could fall, then no site is truly safe. Every layer of protection suddenly feels thinner. Every mountain feels less like a shield and more like a possibility. And yet, for the operators who carried out the mission, there is no public reflection, no recognition, no visible trace of what they accomplished. They do not exist in the story that follows, because operations like this are not meant to be remembered. Only results are. The mountain eventually settles back into silence. Wind returns across its surface. Dust resettles into cracks. From a distance, it begins to look like just another formation in an endless range of rock and shadow. But something fundamental has changed beneath it. Not just destruction, not just loss, but balance, a shift in how distance, depth, and secrecy are. Understood because that night proved a simple truth that cannot be ignored. No matter how deep something is buried, it is never beyond reach. And in modern warfare, that changes everything.